Just to be clear, I'll start recording from now then.
Okay, I already have.
Oh, actually, it says for us that we need to request permission from the meeting host. Actually, if I could give you our email, or if you could put it onto a
great. Thank you.
Right. Thanks.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. If you can record and send it to us. Yeah.
Yeah, we're recording right now. No worries.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Before the other panelist comes, can both the teams members tell their gender pronouns and introduce themselves to the panel? All right. So both teams, please introduce yourselves and your gender pronouns, if any.
Yep. I'm just messaging them to the chat now.
All right.
Wait, so why was the message to the chat, guys? Or
oh, so I'll just do it vocally. So I'm the first opposition speaker. My name is Dung, and my preferred pronouns are he, him.
All right.
I'm Minh, M-I-N-H, him, he. The second op.
Right.
I'm third op. My name is Uyen, U-Y-E-N, and I prefer her, she.
All right. And who is giving the reply?
I'll be giving the reply.
The first speaker.
Yeah, the first opposition.
Yeah. All right. We still haven't got the panelists, so let me go to the breakout meeting room and check.
Oh, good.
Naeem won't be joining us, so it will be just two of us. So you guys can begin now. First, assist Huang, the Prime Minister, to start.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's the same
podcast.
Hi, can you check your mic one more time? It's a bit loud. And
Hello? Can you hear me?
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you are on.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, currently we have thousands of unpassionate people heading off to university to do Bachelor of Arts.
All right, sorry. Just a miss from my side. Can you guys please tell the motions? I didn't note it, so sorry.
Oh yeah, we're doing the one on university education.
All right, and which one did you veto? Both sides?
We vetoed the first motion.
We veto.
Yeah, we vetoed
Hi,
the
my internet isn't stable. So could you please turn off your video because it's the audio is kind of lagging out. I'm really sorry. My internet isn't that stable.
That's okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can go off
I
just tell
can.
which motion did they veto?
Oh,
We
vetoed
vetoed the
first.
one on prefix punishment.
All right,
Negative
and the
veto
off.
motion 3. We veto motion 3. Negative. We veto motion 3.
Oh. All right. You can begin now. Here.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, every year thousands of unpassionate people head off to university to study Bachelor of Arts in subjects like philosophy because they feel like they have no other choice in the society that gives them, and they incur thousands of dollars of debt as a result for no tangible benefit. The counter-narrative we support today, instead of that education leads to higher living standards, is that there are many pathways to success, such as trades, such as starting your own business, or such as working up the ladder at just like a normal hospitality job or something like that. We think the other thing that is important to note is that that when you support a counter-narrative like this, you erode the status that a university education comes with because living standards are inherently linked to your status in society. 3 points for you today. Firstly, how this will result in higher living standards across the board. Secondly, how this will result in better social cohesion in countries. And thirdly, we will bring you a split at Chenchen about how this results in better education. Firstly, though, what does this context actually look like? And we think there are two worlds in which this takes place. First, the developed world, and secondly, the developing world. So in the developed world, we see that uni education is seen as exclusive to wealth. More people go to university when they could do better otherwhere because they think it is necessary in order for them to be able to get a high-paying job. We think that this is because narratives have built up that you need degrees to get high-paying jobs when realistically a lot of these could be learned on the job. We think that there are two reasons why people head off to university in the first place. The first internal motivation is that they feel like they need to go to university to be successful. Even if they aren't passionate, even if they don't feel any desire to go to university at all, they think that is the path to success. The second motivation that leads unpassionate people to head off to university is because they know they have no desire to go to university, but there is a lot of familiar pressure for them to want to send them to university in the first place. We think as a result of these motivations, university ends up oversubscribed and there is not enough jobs for the people who have university degrees. We think the comparative, when we look at the counter-narrative we have proposed, is that we end up with less people just inherently going to university because they feel like that is the only path to success. We end up with more people in jobs they are passionate about. We end up with more people climbing ladders in different ways. Secondly, though, how does this operate in the developing world? And we think that it's very different in the developing world because university education is seen as a ticket out of poverty. It is also seen as a winner-takes-all market where often families prioritize one children to get a university education over others. This is because in a lot of developing countries, state-mandated education ends at age 12. A lot of families can't afford to put all their kids through high school and university, and therefore they send their kids. They pick one kid to send through high school and through university. The problem with this is that the marginal return to university is very slim, as there are not the large markets that require university jobs in these developing countries, like big tech firms or big like technology firms, things like that. We think the trade-off is worse, and we think under the counter-narrative, we end up with more people sending their kids just to high school education and sending all their kids to high school education. The marginal return on this is much higher because we get things like we get a teacher reference for them to go into jobs, we get them to network with other kids who've had education, and it's a far more equal playing field because the diminishing returns beyond high school are far lower. We think that we get a better education spread, we get more agency for these people, we get less pressure on the one breadwinner of the family, and we get a better society overall. So first point today, why do we get higher living standards in both these contexts? And note that this is the most important point in today's debate, because we think that it is inherently important that everyone has living standards that are high enough for them to get by in society. The way we can improve that and improve society as a whole is inherently good. So in the developed world, we see that there are very few like high-skilled jobs that need a university education. We think that these are things like tech firms, and we think because these are all like doctors, because you learn a huge amount of skills in university. However, a lot of other university degrees do not teach you skills that are applicable to work. Let's look at an example today. For someone who goes to university and studies a politics degree, the amount of use that they get out of writing 3 years worth of politics essay is not as useful as the amount of experience they get working in the political office of a member of parliament, or of a local mayor, or of a local councillor. We think that the experience they get in those options is far greater. However, people because of this prioritization on university degrees, we see an oversubscription because they see it as the only path to success. The other reason why we have a problem with oversubscription today is we see people signing up to become things like lawyers. Then we end up with too many lawyers, and we do not have enough job spaces to fill this demand. And then these people end up having to go into something like the trades anyway, and just having masses of student debt. The comparative today is that we end up with less people going to university and just going into jobs in which they are able to, without like hordes of student debt, which inherently raises their living standard because they don't have to struggle to get a job. Secondly, though, in the developing world, we see that there is just less pressure on this one person to succeed, and we spread the burden to provide across multiple people. We think this is better because if the one breadwinner in your family doesn't end up becoming a lawyer and strikes out and has to go work on a farm in a sweatshop in Bangladesh because they didn't get into law, they didn't get into a good law firm, we think that this is a lot better if we can end up with lots of kids with high school educations who can go into average paying jobs. It's better for families, it's better for their own living standards to be able to raise themselves out of poverty on our side of the house in the counter narrative. Second point today is about how we improve social cohesion with this counter narrative. In the developed world, we see that this is looks like many people in jobs that don't need university degrees. We think that when this happens and people go to university because they see this is the only path to success, we also see that jobs only hire people who have university degrees because of this inherent norm. What this looks like is people who can't afford to go to university being locked out of jobs like accountants, being locked out of jobs like economists that you can probably learn a large majority of the skills for on the job in the first place due to the stigma surrounding university degrees. We think on our side of the house, under the counter narrative, we're able to get people working up the ladder, starting in accounting firms, learning how to write your balance statement, and rising up the ranks. We're able to get better social cohesion because there is less stigma around the fact that there is you need a university degree. More people think they have a chance to succeed in life. Secondly, under the developing world, we just think that more education leads to more agency, more people being able to self-determine themselves more and are more self-reliant. They're able to apply the skills they care about, and there is less pressure on the individual. We end up with a better functioning society in both contexts. The most important thing to note in today's debate is that individuals end up with better living standards and society ends up better as a whole. We are very proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Now I welcome the Leader of Opposition to open up the case for side opposition.
I'm so sorry. I just disconnected for the last 20 seconds. Oh, no, but my teammate just gave me the material, so I think I should be fine.
All right. You can contact the teammate.
Can you give me?
And
10 seconds?
after that, yeah, sure.
Well, I think it should be fine. I'll just read it in the round. Give me 1 minute. I'm gonna turn. I'll start in three, two, one. Panel, to start off, we would like to tell you that the characterization has been brought up by the first proposition speaker is extremely unrealistic. They, their whole point are based on two assumptions that universities are not accessible and universities are not needed for jobs. And I would like to spend the first 1 minute of my speech to tell you why this is not the case. So on the first matter, so this is a form of recontextualization. So on the first matter, why is it accessible? We believe that universities are becoming increasingly accessible due to three structural reasons. Firstly, scholarship. Secondly, the country subsidizing the education. And thirdly, these countries also have an incentive to subsidize the education in the first place. So on the first reason, scholarship, on our side, we believe that many universities around the world are offering scholarships to those in need. Even traditionally elite schools, such as Harvard, are offering scholarships to anyone below a certain amount of income that has been admitted to their university. This is because many of them have an incentive to do so because they want to portray a positive PR image of themselves, and for this reason, they want to portray themselves as someone who cater to even the poor classes of society. And for this reason, scholarship is abundant in many of the top universities. And we also believe that they also want to diversify the student base to better allow their campuses to be better. And this is another reason why they would cater to the poorer students. Secondly, we also believe that even for less elite school and non privately owned school, countries are incentivized to educate their people and educate their people. Universities that are expensive are unique to Western countries and they're outliers in their education fee. We believe that a lot of countries in the East, for instance, such as Vietnam, has huge subsidy for universities, which translates into scholarships, bigger classrooms, which eventually makes it more accessible to everyone in the population. We also believe that we also believe that many countries around the world, such as the Nordic countries, such as Germany, are offering free education for the majority of their population. The reason for this is because they want an educated population to further the economy, and it is also something that is very good for a re-election campaign. Secondly, on their second point of assumption, why they believe that universities are not needed for jobs. We believe that this is simply untrue. Yes, you might get some jobs if you don't have a university degree, such as in trades, such as in startups, but we believe that trade, firstly, is inherently very bad for your body. You're sacrificing your own health in order to gain some income, and it cannot be compared to blue collar jobs in terms of living standards. And secondly, startups are, well, they are very unlikely to happen, are very unlikely to succeed. So why is it needed? Why are universities degrees needed for jobs? There are three reasons, and side proposition need to rebut all three of them in order to take down the link between university degrees and jobs. The first link, increasing specialization in jobs. You need universities to teach certain subjects. You need a university degree to be able to do certain professions. For instance, you are not born a lawyer. You cannot learn on the job on how to become a lawyer. You have to be taught 2 to 3 years on the different cases that you need to, iconic cases that you need to remember, how to argue with the opponent, many of the court procedures that you simply cannot learn on the job. You need 3 years of your life dedicated to learn many of these very complex jobs. And secondly, on mass applications, you need to signal to your employers on how on how suitable you are for a job. They simply cannot sift through every single CV, and for this reason, university serves as a signaling so you can actually show your employers how competent you are. Thirdly, on optics, we believe that more people have a university education, so in the end, everyone needs it for later job application, which is why in the status quo, while it is regrettable, university degrees are needed for jobs and to lead to a better living standard. So now I would like to go on to my 2 points. Firstly, on why university is important for uh, for living standards, and secondly, on how even the struggle for university is something that is beneficial for the students in the long run. So firstly, why universities are important for living standards. I believe I have told you why why finding a job needs a university degree. So on our side, we believe that finding a job is also something that is essential for living standards. Uh, we concede that university degrees do not automatically lead to a job, but even the useless degrees that they're trying to tell us, like, I don't know, philosophy or arts, serve their purpose. You can be an artist, you can join a think tank. And we believe that on a comparative side proposition simply does not equip people with the necessary skills or qualifications needed to find a job. Only jobs, and the impacts of this are huge. We would like to weigh this on in terms of the utilitarian model for the individual, that individuals can enjoy a better life through mechanisms such as social mobility. They allow poorer people to move up in society and escape the poverty trap. We allow people to receive blue collar jobs, which give them much higher living standards. And on a comparative, this happened less on the other side. Well, what have they brought up for us in this clash? They have told us on how, well, if too many people apply to universities, if there is going to be an oversubscription. This means that benefits on our side does not happen as many people do not get a job. We believe that firstly, it is not the fault of the narrative that people cannot find a job. It's the fault of the people for glorifying these jobs, such as people glorifying being a lawyer is something that's good. And this is not something is something that happens on both sides, and this is why we do not have to defend it. And secondly, it is also not the fault of the narrative, but the economy that these people cannot find a job in the first place. Secondly, I would like to go on to my second point on how even the strive towards university is beneficial for people to be successful later on in life. Firstly, we believe that universities have a so here is where we cross the bench and we show you why even the pursuit of a university, in the rare case that you do not get into university, is still something that is beneficial. We believe that universities have a selection process. So in the process of preparing for these selection processes, people gain better leverage to a better life. Firstly, four things: CV building. CV building. You have to get things such as you have to immerse yourself in extracurricular activities. You have to find job experience, all of which are greatly beneficial for you as an individual. Secondly, education. You would pay more attention to school as you would want to find a better university later on in your life. Thirdly, networking. You would form connections in your search for university later on in your life. Fourthly, on skills. You would form soft skills through extracurricular. You could form soft skills through many of the things that I've listed before, and this allows you to better compete in the job market later on in your life, allowing you for a much better living standards. On the comparative, their side of the house, there is no clear goal to strive towards. People have less motivation, or people have motivation, but they don't have a direction to strive towards. And even if the selection process is flawed, we believe that these selection processes are based on what the respective societies view make a successful citizen, and all of the above aspects will be relevant to the society as
Sorry, your Wi-Fi. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
You aren't audible in the last 10 or 20 seconds. Can you repeat?
Yeah, last 10 or 20 seconds. He is disconnected. He said give him a second to reconnect to the Zoom.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, our speaker is asking for the link of the Zoom. I'm just going to quickly give it to him. I think he lost the link. Okay, I just sent it to him. He should be joining us soon.
All right.
You you cut off like in the last few seconds, I think. I think you were up to
Yeah,
even
just
if process is flawed, even if process is flawed, you talk about something like that.
yeah, yeah. Even if process is flawed, you can continue from there only.
Wait, is he there? Wait, he's wait,
I don't think he is here because there are only 7 participants in this room.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
yeah.
got kicked out of the Zoom meeting. So when I
All
left,
right, all right. No problem.
You were
You
on
can
to
start.
process is flawed. Process is flawed or something.
oh sorry, where was I?
You were on to the even if the process is flawed,
Okay,
these
I stopped
selections are
my
based on.
oh yeah, I stopped my timer at 8 minutes, which was when I disconnected. So I'll resume quickly. So give me a sec. 1, 2, 3. Furthermore, we believe that even if this process is flawed, these elections are still based on what the respective society views make a successful citizen. And we believe that therefore all of the above aspects will still be relevant to the society the individual is living in. And even if these people don't end up as the most well-rounded individual, their profile would still give the appearance of what the society thinks is good. And side proposition might preempt this by saying, well, there might be stress. We believe that the marginal harm of this cannot be compared to the benefits of getting a university degree for a job. And for all of these reasons, very proud to oppose.
Thank you. Thank you, leader of opposition. Now I would request the second speaker of affirmative side to come and continue the case of side affirmative. Is the second speaker here?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, no video.
No video.
No video. Okay. Just give me a second. Give me a second to organize my notes. Panel, it's not true that this debate operates on individuals who are most suitable to going to university, because those people are going to go under either side of the house. In actuality, the way in which this norm operates is often on the people who are least suitable to go to university and most likely to get the very least out of it. To that extent, we say it doesn't operate on the success cases that side negative wants to assert that it does. A few things in the speech. Firstly, I'm just going to do some quick responses to their material about the accessibility of university. Secondly, I'm going to explain to you how this norm operates in our counterfactual. Thirdly, I'm going to tell you about why we deliver better life outcomes. And finally, I'm going to tell you about why we get better social cohesion. So firstly, on whether or not university is accessible or not. And I think it's relatively clear that they can't just assert that scholarships and social funding are able to completely mitigate the severe restrictions that exist on individuals to access university. In actuality, university in the United States costs upwards of $50,000 a year, something that most people have to save years and years to be able to afford. But moreover, even in the instance that they're able to prove that they get social funding, we say that university still has an opportunity cost to the extent that you aren't able to develop your skills in the workforce. Firstly, next, then how does this norm operate in this world? Because we heard one response in response to our material and why we say that a university is oversubscribed, and that they say that it's the fault of the glorification of certain careers like lawyers and doctors. Because that's not actually how the norm operates in this debate, right? We tell you it doesn't just operate on the law pressuring people to take up careers in law and medicine, but to most people going into miscellaneous Bachelor of Arts degrees, things like taking a politics degree because you don't necessarily know what you're going to do next. Moreover, it's even more specific than that, right? Because this norm operates strongest from the people who are least sure about what they want to do. You're only going to enter an incredibly specialized degree if you're absolutely certain that that's exactly what you want to do, and that's why this norm doesn't necessarily operate on those people. Secondly, in terms of their material on signaling, they told us that university acts as a positive signaling mechanism. Because in actuality, the way in which you get into university is incredibly arbitrary in most cases. It's either because you have landed into extreme amounts of wealth and you're able to afford university to begin with, or it's because you're able to do successfully in things like the SATs, which have absolutely no bearing on your ability to perform a job well. In actuality, those SAT tests are based on a lot of and superficial science that often overprivileges white people over people of other descents. But what else did we tell you? We told you that in the developing world, education exists as a winner-take-all system, something that was not responded to by first negative speaker. What did we tell you that our norm was? And their biggest problem with our norm is that there was no clear direction for an individual to take to actively uplift their life, and that meant that individuals probably weren't as sure as to what direction they're going to take. But university has this problem as well, right? The reason why people take degrees where they're unsure about what they want to do in the future is exactly that reason. But moreover, it's not exactly clear that university is that pathway for success to begin with, right? Because to properly mechanize a Bachelor of Arts degree or a Bachelor of Science, you need to have extensive knowledge about your field and rely a lot on your on your networking skills to be able to get ahead with degrees without a clear career path anyway. So what does this mean at the end of this? That means that their two responses to how the norm operates don't stand, and in actuality, their norm is just as bad, is at very least as bad as the one that we're going to stand for. What are we going to tell you necessarily in terms of life outcomes? Because they gave you two lines of response here. Firstly, they told us that our necessarily pathways are bad, so like trades necessarily are bad for your health or something like that. Firstly, to the extent that it harms your health, we think that that's an acceptable harm if it means that you're going to be able to have a higher income and better able to provide for your family. Note in particular that countries like New Zealand, like in the United States, trades actually out-earn a lot of university professions at the moment. So we think that it's perfectly reasonable for individuals to make that trade-off to begin with. But in comparison, they secondly told you that politics is a useful skill and you'll be able to get some kind of soft skills and extraneous benefits in the way in which you're able to self-actualize. First thing to note here, I think it's quite clear in this debate that the main thing that we value for these people who aren't particularly clear about what their life direction is that they want to make sure they access the highest level of living standards possible. So to that extent, we think that their material and soft skills is a wash. But why is it not, at that point, not even going to be able to get you a better job? Because this acts directly in tension to what we told you already at Aisha. Requirements for a lot of quite specifically, non-technical jobs that have now increased their requirements to require things like Bachelor of Arts degrees, where they actually aren't necessarily that operative in those sorts of fields, right? And that is a result of the fact that if society values education, everyone has education, you want to use education as a distinguishing factor between different individuals. That's particularly bad because education isn't the only determinant of whether or not you can be a good employee or not, but is also actively made more perverse for the reasons that I told you earlier about why entry to university is necessarily particularly arbitrary. So to the point at which the requirements for these non-technical jobs increase, that's the point where you actually lock out a lot of different individuals from those jobs to begin with. But moreover, this doesn't really respond to our oversubscription analysis, right? To the extent that these jobs are going to be oversubscribed to, that's the point at which you depress the incomes for these jobs and you stop letting these jobs be able to lift you out of your situations in terms of living standards as much. What else did we tell you necessarily about how this operated in the developing world? Because we told you that the way in which the education norm works in the developing world is that you want to put all your eggs in one basket. And that comes from the irrational belief that if you're able to get one kid to university, you're all of a sudden going to be able to lift your entire family out of poverty. We gave you good reasons at Aisha why education necessarily has diminishing returns to scale, and it's actually better to spread out that educational benefit on multiple members of your family as opposed to centralize it to one individual, right? Reasons like structurally in developing countries there are less high skilled and less technical jobs available, but moreover, just because it's just very unlikely that you're going to be able to out earn 7 or 8 of your siblings who weren't able to go to high school because you're going to go to university. In actuality, the way in which this norm operates is that you erode this belief that university is the only way that you can get that you can become successful. That's the point at which you let market mechanisms better allocate what jobs individuals take, and that's the point at which you get more individuals having on net higher incomes as a result. But finally, what was unresponded to from Aisha's speech is still the material we brought to you on social cohesion. We told you that people use university as a status symbol, and that's particularly problematic because access to university is limited and is necessarily limited in most cases. But even in the instances it's not limited, right? We say that it actively degrades and denigrates people who aren't able to go to university for non-financial reasons, right? People who may suffer from some kind of mental illness and therefore aren't as able to complete their university education as other people, but also people in general who don't think that university is the right pathway for them. To that extent, those people are harmed to the extent that they're seen as a second class in society. At the end of this, we've demonstrated both that you get poorer outcomes in terms of your life and also in terms of social cohesion. We're so proud to propose.
Thank you, second speaker. Now I would pass the baton to the second speaker of side negative. Here.
Hi, am I audible? Is where I am a bit loud?
Yeah, you are audible.
If at any point I'm not at home right now, so if at any point it's hard to listen to, just interrupt me and I will find a more quiet place.
All right.
Probably the hallway. Okay, I'm just gonna get my timer ready. Okay, I will start my speech. Now, speaker, let's take a look at the world of side proposition, where they were very good at pointing fingers but had little to no solutions. 2 strategic observations for side proposition. Firstly, on their context, right? We thought their context was problematic twofold. Firstly, it was very slim, right? Because their points about developing nation, about how a family, just diverts a lot of resources to one child and that being harmful is very slim. So we would tell you that if our benefits can outweigh this, then we take this point. Secondly, a lot of their context was untrue, right? So we already gave you 3 specific reasons why universities are not as expensive as they say, and why in the increasing day and age, a university degree is more and more crucial. And I'm going to prove this later on in Sesante. The second thing about the second strategic observation we made was they had a very big problem solution mismatch. Their burden specified from first speaker about how that they were going to prove that they get better living standards. But what was their logic? Their logic was, uni is not needed, no uni equals better life, therefore you get better living standards. This is very damaging because they didn't prove their burden. So if we can prove that we have better living standards, then we can swoop in and take this burden. 2 key issues in my speech before I get into my third and final substantive about how this just betters societies in a whole. Firstly, the first issue, right? Are university degrees actually beneficial? What did we get coming out of proposition? They said, no, university degrees aren't beneficial because there are a lot of jobs that you can do without university degrees, and there's a lot of trade jobs, et cetera, and you don't need university degrees. This is untrue. We gave you 3 reasons why. First, gave you 3 reasons why, because firstly, there's like a lot of people have in the status quo, a lot of people already have university degrees. So if you don't have this narrative, it's the status quo, these people are still here. So therefore, you need a university degree to be competitive. So we gave you many reasons why this is true. I'm going to give you 2 more reasons. Firstly, because with a university degree, you're more adaptable. Why is being adaptable important in this day and age? Firstly, because we're living in a skills-based economy, right? So that means like we agree. You're probably not going to do what your major is, but the skills you get from uni are the skills about adaptability. You need to be adaptable to be able to work in this workforce. This is why companies like McKinsey or BCG don't really hire people based on their major, but hire people based on the skills that they have. And then when you get into that company, they're just gonna teach you and train you. But they're just gonna be showing you on the job. But a university degree is crucial in proving that you can actually, because it gives you the skills that you can actually learn. Secondly, the second thing I'm going to add is that trade jobs are dying, right? Trade jobs are dying because they're just the rise of automation. So therefore, we think that like we think that it's like increasingly crucial for you to have a university degree because like there's just more jobs opening up. But the jobs that are opening up are jobs like in niche markets where you need a university degree to be able to get into those markets. Secondly, on the accessibility, and furthermore, I would just like to point out that because like we proved that, what did we tell you? We told you that university degrees are 1, just for better living standards, and 2, we crossed the bench and showed you that even if that person were to fail in getting a university degree, just the pursuit of a university degree in itself is good. This, I think, outweighs your arguments about like developing countries, this just outweighs your argument. Okay, secondly, on the accessibility, right? We gave you 3 reasons on why university degrees are accessible. And note panel, this is where their slim context is damaging because their context was basically, schools are expensive. It costs $50K a year. But panel, that's only in the United States. We have countries like Vietnam where literally university is free. You have countries like in Hong Kong where like HKU doesn't cost that much money. You have a lot of Eastern countries where universities are very, very cheap. So they were only willing to engage in the context about how, universities universities are very expensive. And furthermore, we already told you that governments have an incentive to subsidize universities because it means that you just have a better workforce. And furthermore, financial aid and scholarships still exist. So panel, why is this damaging? Because all of their harms were contingent, all of their harms on going to university were contingent on the fact that you will accrue a bunch of student debts. But we already told you, this is not true. This is like only applicable in the United States or like a few subset of Western countries. And no, in these countries, financial aid and stuff like that still exists. So their best case is basically, you take a good trade job. But we think it significantly our benefit significantly outweighs this when you have like the suitable skills to be able to adapt in an ever-changing market. And then I'm going to move on. Now I'm going to move on to my substantive about bettering society as a whole, right? I think that there's a very glaring problem in society nowadays. I think that the rise of like just anti-scientific claims and populism is very damaging. Why is it damaging? Because it means that there's like a gridlock in governments, right? It means that it's very hard for you to like get proper policy solutions because there's like just a big disagreement over the basic facts. This is very, very damaging because you have people who deny lockdowns. You have people who say, masks don't prevent COVID-19. You have global warming deniers. This skews the conversation from the solutions to like, instead of conversations about like solutions, it skews the political discourse, and therefore you're just going to more talk about like if these problems actually exist or not. So why do these people have very anti-scientific claims? We think threefold. Firstly, because they just have cultural biases, like just like due to the fact that where they grew up. Secondly, it's just because of the lack of accessible knowledge, and thirdly, because of like their individual echo chambers. Like if their father, their mother all denied climate change, probably they're going to deny climate change too. How do we solve this problem in our house, right? On our side of the house, right? Because we uniquely get more people to go to university because because uniquely in universities, you have like a core curriculum which teaches you like basic scientific inquiry, basic facts. You're just like a more educated person. Secondly, because like when you go and no panel, like when you go to university, you're like in a better place to learn because you're willingly there to learn. So therefore you're more likely to like take in knowledge and you're more likely to learn and expose yourself to different knowledge, hence breaking your individual echo chambers. And secondly, because you're just like in a more diverse surrounding. So therefore you're like better to able to break out of your biases, break out of your echo chambers, right? So why is this impactful? Why is this crucial, right? Because we push back on, because there's like, there will be like less pushback on policies such as like anti-lockdown or like not wearing masks, but like climate change deniers, because people will be smarter than to like fall subservient to like anti-scientific claims and baseless media. because therefore they're more likely to buy into like scientific claims instead of denying them. This is crucial because one, you just get more like people are just like more likely to buy into scientific claims. Secondly, you push back on populist rhetorics. Thirdly, you get more accessible. You get like better voters who are like more willing to tackle problems that are like very crucial in the status quo. These are problems like climate change, like the responses to COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. These problems are very important. And the side benefit we actually get is just to get a more efficient workforce. So therefore, we just get like a better workforce on our side of the house, right? Secondly, I'm just going to deal with a bit of like I'm just going to push our op one case and the things that they didn't respond to, right? Because Zoom gave you a lot of reasons on how we get better living standards, right? In my intro, I already told you that if we can prove that we get better living standards for these people, then we would take this burden. Zoom literally gave you like 5 reasons why you get better living standards for these people, because A, they're like better able to build their CV. B, because they have just better connections. C, because like they learn more, and they're like, it signals to employers that they have skills, they have the skills needed for an ever-changing market. Therefore, they're more adaptable. Therefore, they're like more able to get blue-collar jobs. And C, they're just like better able to find jobs and better able to combat automation. So therefore, I think that on this side, on this burden, we take this. And we've already crossed the bench. And we've already showed you why even if these people don't like end up with a degree, just the pursuit of getting this degree is good in the first place. Panel, I urge you to vote opposition.
Thanks to the second speaker of negative side. Now I pass the panel to the third speaker of side government. Here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. We never had to prove to you today that university was useless. We never had to prove to you that no one should ever go to university because it never provides good outcomes. What we do have to prove to you is that at the point in time that many courses at university are oversubscribed, you get substantially diminishing returns. That means that a lot of these people will be far better off going elsewhere. Okay, 2 clashes in this debate. Firstly, is university accessible? And secondly, how necessary is university? On university accessibility, note that not only do they have to prove that university is accessible, but they also have to prove that it is better than the alternative. If we can prove in this debate that an even equally, if not more accessible system provides better outcomes, we win this clash, and it makes it a lot easier for us to win this debate. Okay, so on university being accessible, what did they have for us today? They had 2 main lines of analysis here. They said that firstly, there are scholarships and there are other ways of redistributing like entry into university. And secondly, they told us that many places have university for free. Okay, what are our responses? So firstly, on scholarships, what did we tell you? We told you that firstly, a large amount of these scholarships go to the rich anyway. At the point in time, they are merit-based because the rich have a large advantage. Okay, so then they wanted to tell us that there are many scholarships available to poor people. Fine, let's recognize that some scholarships are available to poor people, but let's put in context just how few scholarships this is. Not only is this the small number of scholarships that are even offered, but this is the even smaller subset of those scholarships that are specifically available to those below a certain amount of income. Okay, even among these people, we tell you that only the poor people that are the most academically gifted, that are the most passionate and the most talented will be getting them. We told you that we're happy to stand by these people going to university on our side of the house as well, and these aren't the people in this debate that we were concerned about. We are more concerned about the hundreds of thousands of people that aren't passionate about going to university, that are also poor, going to university, and this is a nuance that they failed to grasp. What did we also tell you? They wanted to say that some countries like Germany and Vietnam have free university. Even if we take them at their best, considering that many places do not have free university, and these are the outliers,
even if we take them at their best, this does not account for the fact that if you are studying full-time, it is incredibly hard to pay rent because it is incredibly hard to work, especially if they want to focus a lot of their accessibility point among the poorest people in society. These are the people that likely do have to work to ensure that food is on the table at the end of the day, that do have to provide for people bigger than themselves, that do have to provide for multiple families. At the point in time in which they are studying full-time, that is incredibly difficult for them to do, and this is still not accessible at that point in time. We also told you that student debt exists, right? And let me just compound this further by saying that student debt is incredibly oppressive, and it dampens productivity even beyond university, even in places that we see as being developed, like the United States, which has an absolutely massive student debt problem and has an incredibly extractive system in place to ensure that students are bled dry. We tell you that this debt also disproportionately affects those that are poor because it can be regressive. Okay, more importantly, how necessary is university? This is the most important clash in this debate. Okay, let me just reiterate something. They wanted to say that no one is born a lawyer. We agree, but we also tell you that the inverse is true and that not everyone is born a lawyer. We tell you that at the point in time in which you have these highly specialized degrees, such as law, that are vastly oversubscribed, far beyond the amount of demand for actual lawyers in our system, we get absolutely terrible outcomes. We were never going to try and replace the lawyer degree or the bar exam in this debate, but what we were going to tell you is that a large number of these people that are currently doing these degrees like law would be far better off if they had chosen a different path. However, they couldn't because of the oppressive narrative that exists in our society. Okay, what else do we tell you? We also told you that it's important to recognize that this is a debate in which we regret this narrative, and therefore we have feared to outline what the world might look like if this narrative didn't exist and why that world might look better. Okay. So we told you that university is not necessary to the extent they wanted to push in either the developing or the developed world. What did we tell you about the developing world? We told you that in the developing world, there is a winner takes all mentality. They tried to tell you that this context was incredibly narrow. Why is this context not narrow? Because this context is one in which a dominant narrative in places like Bangladesh and places like India actually does dictate how many families choose to lead their lives, and not only the lives of themselves, but also dictates the lives of those around them and their family, because not everyone can afford to go to university. We told you this looks like one individual going to university at the cost of high school education for those other family members and countries where the state does not provide education beyond the age of like 12. We told you this robs other family members of their agency to live their own life and apply their own skills for productive value and be able to feel like they are also contributing to their family. And we also told you it puts incredible undue stress on these one individuals that have been chosen to be the breadwinner of the family. I'm going to bring to you another harm now, which is what about when these people fail? Because this was something they never wanted to engage with on their side of the house, but is the unfortunate reality. Even if they want to talk about lawyers as their best example, let's talk about lawyers. There are only so many jobs for lawyers. However, there are far more people taking law degrees. What does this mean in this debate? Does this mean that suddenly more jobs are created for lawyers at the point in time in which these people graduate and there's demand for it? Absolutely not. What happens is those people that are trained to be lawyers, that spend 5 years getting a lawyer education, that spend tens of thousands of dollars going into debt to get this education with the expectation that they can provide for their 5 family members, when they do not get the job, if they are not the smartest or the best or the richest with the most connections, what this actually looks like is they are then forced to either take a very low-level lawyer job, such as being a clerk for many years and making a very small amount of money, or are not even able to practice in the field of law whatsoever. Their degree becomes essentially worthless and they're forced to take up a trade anyway, at which point we tell you that they would have been far better off at the point of time if they decided to go through the trade route earlier. Because let's just mention this comparative, right? Let me just outline to you how much easier it is on our side of the house if these people decided to do take a different route. We told you this looks like things like the trades. Let me just outline. In absolutely any country, the effective time that you have to put into learning a trade and the effective hours is a lot less on balance than being a full-time student. We also told you it's a lot cheaper than being a full-time student. Furthermore, we tell you it's a lot more productive than being a full-time student at the point in time in which if you are learning a trade like construction, for example, you can often work on the side utilizing the fact that you are working in the construction trade and learning that trade while also getting paid for it in a way that an unpaid internship for something like a doctor or a law student would never be able to provide for you. Okay, what did we also tell you about the developed world? We also told you that even in the developed world, a similar harm applies to poor families. They wanted to talk about breaking the poverty cycle. We tell you at the point in time at which they don't break the poverty cycle, and like they would have been far better off like learning a trade, that this is just an increased harm for these poor families. We also tell you that like, and even at the point in time you aren't poor, even if you are reasonably well off, if you do something that you're not passionate in, you aren't able to self-actualize. What does self-actualization look like in this debate? It looks like getting a better standard of living because you're passionate about your work. You're passionate about what you're doing and you feel connected to the work that you do and the value that you provide to the society. We think that's incredibly important. They wanted to talk about like this weird split about like at the point in time that we don't have university, everyone is like, you know, like anti-science. We fail to understand how, for example, a drama student is going to be more likely to be pro-science than anyone that does a trade, right? We tell you that oftentimes people that do trades are even more connected with some scientific stuff and we don't see how that's relevant. Also, we told you that it's very difficult to automate problem solving in trades. There is a massively important human element, which is why many trades have not actually had that level of automation that they wanted to bring to you today, such as like, for example, like truck drivers is basically the only way in which we've seen this happen so far. For these reasons, we are proud to affirm. Thank you.
All right, thanks to the third speaker of side proposition. Now I expect the third speaker of side opposition to come and continue the case.
Am I audible?
Yeah,
Hi.
you are.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna set up my timer. Give me a second. Okay, you can still hear me, right? Let us just clarify once and for all that university education is necessary for you to actually succeed in today's life. Like I'm just gonna tell you first and for all 2 structural reasons why. I've actually reiterated all throughout our whole entire case. Firstly, employers simply do not have time to wait for you to prove your skill. They have a billion kind of resumes to read. They're not gonna have time to be, oh, maybe this person has some skill, you know, I want to look at their work experience and try to analyze how many skills they have, whether they're suitable for this job. They don't have time to do that. So really, they're gonna look at the title and say, oh, does this person have a kind of certification that verifies they actually have the qualification to do this job or not? That kind of headline is the only headline that the employers actually have time to look at. They're not gonna have time to look at whether or not you actually have soft skills, other skills you build over time. Secondly, employers are not going to spend time to be patient to invest in you to learn those skills. We have so many other options of people who go to university. For example, instead of like spending $1 billion on you to train you to get those skills, get ownership that they said, they can easily invest in a student in uni who will really learn those skills. And there's an abundance of those students in the market nowadays. So obviously, it is this is the reality that university education is very important for you to have a secure job in today's market. That's just how the reality works. Okay, but also another point about how I just want to try to just like quickly just have housekeeping issues. I like to paint the idea that people are just extremely coerced in the university. First of all, I don't believe this is actually the case. Obviously, if people are not like actually, I'm actually gonna move to my case. Actually, I'm gonna do this in my clashes. That's actually a better idea. Okay, 2 clashes in today's debate. Firstly, which side actually betters the life of these individuals in society? And secondly, which side is actually better for society as a whole? Firstly, which actually better the life of individuals in the society? I want to point out 2 structural problems with their case. The first structural problem is that they like to concentrate on useless degrees, like for example, like taking political science or taking a very like philosophy like degrees that don't actually like have a lot of employable options. I want to first point out that few people actually take this degree, like very few amount of people actually take this degree, and most people who take these degrees actually want to go into postgraduate or have to have connections in industry already for them to get unemployment. They're not like the kind of people that is actually being harmed from taking these degrees themselves. Furthermore, so these people are actually a very small part of the situation themselves. Secondly, they like to they just tend to focus on the wrong stakeholders in today's debate. I tend to focus on stakeholders, the people who are going to go into like who are going to go into like jobs that don't require a university degree. Like for example, they're gonna go into like become a construction worker or so forth. We argue that these people in the status quo are not going to go to uni either way. Why? Firstly, the jobs that they're applying to obviously don't require a university degree. They know they don't need to take one to go into these jobs. And secondly, obviously, university degree is an investment in time. These people who are most likely people from like lower income backgrounds are not going to very much value their time and money. So they're not going to invest in these. You feel that they actually have a valid chance of getting a job. So that side basically just kind of really like engage in very small context of emotion, whether people take useless degrees and stakeholders who aren't actually impacted in today's debate. Okay, but okay, on to like the main meat of the clash itself. So they tell you that people with no clear direction are going to go to uni and do a job that they don't really care about. First thing we tell you, irrespective of whether or not these people have a sense of direction, going to uni alone will secure them a job in today's life. It was said to you before, as employers don't have a lot of time. They need to know you're qualified for the job. They don't have time to actually look into your specific circumstances. And secondly, it's just that. Secondly, we told you how people make people more adaptable and so forth, and like how people don't have time to actually invest in you. So irrespective of whether these people actually have a clear direction when they go to university, they're going to need this degree in order to get a better place in life. But furthermore, we actually disagree. I think people will actually have a sense of direction in the university career. Why? Because most universities have academic advisors, people to advise you into career directions. All universities have this very large pack of academic advisors. So the truth is that when you go to university, there will be people who give you directions to know which society is best for you. So even if you go to uni with no idea who you're going to be, the mechanism and the advisors in you, they're going to help you find your path in life either way. Okay, so we checked this from the onset. Okay, but also the idea about like lower professions, the professions that are very much overflooded. The reason why these professions are overflooded is because of the narrative that these professions are very glorified and very good for society. This is not dependent on a university narrative, and therefore this is not a part of the debate today. What about Outside the House? Outside the House shows you clearly that people need a university degree, and therefore this narrative is good because it tells people to go and get what you need to be successful in life. Furthermore, we tell you that even if they don't actually get into university, and even if the degree is useless to themselves, the process of getting into university degrees makes them more competitive in the world nowadays. Our first speaker told you about how it makes them more competitive CV, better soft skills, better networks, and so many other reasons why in the process of getting these degrees themselves, they become more competitive people and better people overall, better secure to get a better life. And furthermore, okay, so even in our worst case scenario, we're still better than their side of the house. Why? Firstly, in the process of trying to get university degrees, and we've proven you in our first speech, which I have not responded to, people actually train themselves better, have better soft skills, better CV. So overall, it actually makes them more competitive and have more chance of getting a better life. But even a worst case scenario, people like get into a job that isn't actually suitable for them, or a job that's really like overflooded. At least they have some kind of qualifications to show that they are an educated human being and like have status and so forth, which will make them more competitive in the eye of recruiters. Still, compared to someone with no qualification and no kind of like verification of their skills at all. So even our worst case scenario is still better than their side of the house. Okay. Also, the second clash, which side is actually better for society as a whole? So firstly, they both to you a point on how employees nowadays are too focused on uni education. Therefore, they deny the opportunity of people who have the actual skills. Firstly, we disagree. We think the fact that the uni narrative is not causing this. The sort of narrative of the university are important is not actually causing the fact the employees focus too much on like qualifications. It's actually the fact that most jobs nowadays require full qualification. Most jobs nowadays require technology and like higher skill sets. Therefore, it's just a natural trend of society that these employees require qualifications. The jobs nowadays are more demanding overall. Okay, a second point about how they talk about elitism and about how like it's gonna be unfair people who can't access university and so forth. First of all, we've proven to you why it's gonna be accessible, but secondly, the truth is that elitism exists on our side of the house. So the marginal increase in elitism doesn't actually really have a big impact over just a marginal increase in elitism if it is. But actually on our side of the house, on the long run, we better destroy elitism. Why? Two reasons. Firstly, we give underprivileged people the means to strive towards, except for give them sense of direction to strive towards. And secondly, education is actually an easier path towards social mobility and other kind of methods. Why? Go to a university degree, you get you kind of easily just like, you just study and you get a better job. But for the data side of the house, you have to like work day by day in the system to actually climb up the ladder. And outside the house, it's actually much easier to have social mobility by studying as ourselves. But then I tell you about how in the system they have, there'll be like an opportunity cost. They'll invest only one kid. First of all, we think it's a legit choice to invest only in one kid, because the truth is that these kids is more likely to get a better job in life. We've proven to you before. But secondly, we believe that even if they invest in this one kid, it's not like they're going to leave the other kids starving because they're their parents, they care about the other members of the family. But it's more likely they just invest in one person to make more money, so other kids can do other jobs in their life. So we don't think this is the case. Okay. As a house, we better for society, like, secondly, I've told you about how we make sure that there is more diversity of opinions and why people are more educated to make positive decisions in real life. So their focus outside the house proves to you how we're better for society and how we're better for these individuals' life as a whole. We're so proud.
Your time is over. All right, thanks. Third speaker of side opposition. Now I request the reply speakers to begin their reply speeches.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Give me 2 seconds. I gotta find the timer. All right. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, if there are 2 words that describe the case of side proposition, it has to be cherry picking and mischaracterization. Side proposition has again and again told you examples of how there are schools around the world, such as the US, which are expensive, and there are some degrees that are bad. All of our speakers down the bench have told you why this is not the case, and they have not responded to our logical reasoning, but they have only provided further examples to disprove our point. We believe that in the end, side proposition has failed their burden in showing us why many of the has failed in the burden in showing us why the universities are not accessible and why universities are not necessary. And for these 2 reasons, we take this debate. The second strategic flaw that has been made by side proposition has to be that there is no viable alternative on their side. The 2 alternatives they have told us is our trade, and the biggest example is learning on the job. I will tell you why this is not something that should be accepted in my later on in my speech. So now to move on to the 2 issues that have been discussed in this speech. Firstly, living standards. Is it necessary to are university degrees necessary to find a job to heighten your living standards? And secondly, are universities truly accessible? So now on the first class, what have we brought you? We have brought you 5 key points of logical reasoning: automation, adaptability, signaling, specialization, optics. Side proposition has rebutted to one of them. The second prop only came up and told us why. Well, signaling doesn't happen because you won't get a degree in the first place. They have also told the third speaker also told us why automation isn't the case, because they require some form of human judgment. However, in my first speech, I already told you that they need to take down all 5 of these reasons to prove that universities is truly not necessary to find a job. And therefore, they have failed in their burden in disproving this. And this is why we believe that we take this debate. As we showed you, there is a clear link between finding a job and finding a university. Well, the alternative is, well, at least they can take trade jobs. What we believe that firstly, trade jobs are very hard on your body, and you earn very little unless you work for 20 or 30 years, by which then your wage increases, which on a comparative, our side provides blue collar jobs, which are much better. Their whole link between universities and university does not lead to living standard is degrees are useless, which we have told you is not the case. They're just cherry picking examples, and oversubscription. We do not have to defend oversubscription. We have told you again and again how it is not the narrative fault. It is the fault of the economy. It is the fault of the people for choosing these prestigious degrees. They have in no way adequately represented this, and this is why the mechanism in this clash fails. And we have adequately proven to you why university degrees leads to a very good job. Secondly, on accessibility, we have provided you 2 mechanisms. Their response to scholarship came out of the third or the second speaker, I believe, and we believe that this is too late. And they told us that, well, scholarship is for the rich. But this is not how scholarship works. Many of the schools provide financial aid for those who are in need. For instance, Harvard provides financial aid for those below 32,000 $32,000 of income a year. So therefore, many of these periods can still apply to universities. And many of the states around the world provide free schools. We told you there is a structural incentive for them to do so. They want to invest in their economy, and they also want to get re-elected. They have not told you why this is not the case on their side. They have only cherry-picked the example of the US to rebut this. And and then we give them examples of free schools, and they say, well, no, that's too narrow, guys. Well, I would like to list some more examples. There are Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Vietnam, Germany. There is a whole host of countries around the world that offer free education, and we believe that this clash we also take. And as we win most of the major clashes that have emerged in this debate, we believe that we firmly take this debate. Very proud to oppose.
All right, thanks opposition reply. Now I request the government reply speaker to come and put forward his points.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It was actually very difficult to debate against side negative today because there are a team of individuals who have internalized the norm that university is good so much that they haven't been able to remove themselves from that context to be able to perceive what a world without university necessarily looks like. Because it's not true that everyone is as smart as the negative team and is always necessarily able to go to a university, get soft skills, and to be able to work a job immediately afterwards. And it's funny how they want to slam us for cherry picking, whereas the only job they could come up with that you could get after getting soft skills was going to work at McKinsey or Bain. We thought that was particularly funny and damaging to their case. All right. Let's go through what happened in this debate. Firstly, I'm just going to quickly elaborate on who this debate actually operates on, right? Because I wanted to claim that we were cherry-picking examples, that people were getting, it was only about people who get useless degrees. That's because that's how the norm debate works. Because this norm doesn't operate on every single individual. It operates the most pervasively on the individuals who are most influenced by the norm. Those are the people who are persuaded to get a useless degree because in the other world, they would have gotten to get a trade anyway. This knocks out most of their analysis because the people who are suited to university, like the negative team, would still go to university anyway without this narrative. All right. Firstly, on accessibility, and then I'll talk about the necessity of university. And note that the accessibility material is necessary for Neg to win, but it's not sufficient for them to win without having necessarily won this point. Because I think in actuality, the negative team had been particularly emblematic at the ability for them to be able to access university, and extrapolated that to every single person in the world can access university. Well, if it was actually true, then that was the case, then we wouldn't be having this debate to begin with, because everyone would necessarily be on an equal footing. But in actuality, we gave you two reasons why this isn't the case. Firstly, abject cost. In countries not just like the US, but in the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and half the countries that debate at Australs to begin with, university has a significant cost. But even if it doesn't have that cost, it has an opportunity cost in your ability to access it. They tried to tell you that scholarships was necessarily sufficient, but scholarships are offered to like 1% of students anyway, so we don't think that that's enough to show that the entirety of society that is impoverished is able to win this debate on that material alone. What about the necessity of university then? Well, the first thing, and I've already flagged, is that they haven't been able to perceive a world in which without this norm, how it would operate, right? Because they claim that you need a university education for every job, but that's circular logic. The only reason why you need a university education for most jobs is because it's a norm that everyone goes to university to begin with. In actuality, the extent to which you have less people going to university to begin with, that's the point at which less jobs require you to have university degrees. It was particularly unclear as to the benefit they wanted to articulate about the soft skills that you were going to get. By the end of this debate, I'm still not sure about what those exactly are. Right. What did we demonstrate to you in this debate? We demonstrated that not just that university is not always beneficial in most cases, but the oversubscription of university is the cause of the harm and not an inherent problem in university of itself, because we told you that when people oversubscribe and counteract market forces, that's the point at which you get less benefit from university. That's a pretty big harm, because that means that individuals miss out on the jobs that they want to get, and they're sold in abstract a lie, waste thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that's functionally useless. We think that it's marginally better for those individuals, and even if they want to contend that trades are not the best thing in this world, it's probably better for them to spend those 3 years getting better at those trade skills than wasting that time at university to begin with. Finally, on social cohesion, and they wanted to give us a response, a third negative no less, about why you get better social mobility in education. Look, there's a very good reason why Harvard has 90% of its students come from the top 1%. And that's an emblematic of the fact that education is an inherently elitist organization and is resistant to change. We're so proud to propose.
All right, thanks to both sides for having this debate. You guys can have a virtual handshake and then leave the room for a while. You can wait in the meeting room, and when we will be done with our discussions, we'll call you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the debate, guys.
Thanks so much for the round. I've added Chenchen on Facebook, and I'll just PM them the link when I'm done uploading.
All right. So till then, you guys can leave the room.